Hey there, welcome back to my channel. Tell me in the comments where are you from and let's get started.
The day I found out, I was standing in a fluorescent lit hallway of St. Mercy General Hospital, holding a piece of paper that weighed more than my entire life. 0%. The DNA test said my son, the boy I had carried, nursed, kissed, scraped knees for E, was not biologically mine. Evan needed a kidney. 16 years old, his kidneys failing. The doctors said it was genetic. I was the first to get tested. Of course I was. I was his mother. I wasn't a match. Not even close. Mrs. Brennan, the technician said, her voice careful. The kind people use when they're about to break you. The results indicate that you and Evan are not biologically related. I laughed. It was that absurd. That's impossible. I gave birth to him. I understand. But the DNA doesn't lie. I paid for a second test. Rush fees, new samples. The second test came back 48 hours later. 0%. That was when I started to remember. David and I had been married 4 years when I got pregnant. We painted the nursery soft yellow. We heard the heartbeat together. He cried. "That's our baby," he whispered. And I believed him. But David had secrets. Late nights at the office when I was 6 months pregnant. Phone calls in the other room, voice low and urgent. I told myself it was stress. Evan was born March 14th at 11:47 p.m. David looked at his watch and said, "Just before midnight, he made it." I thought he meant before St. Patrick's Day. 11 hours of labor. David held my hand, counted contractions, wiped my forehead. When Evan came, screaming and red and perfect, David cut the cord. The nurse placed him on my chest, and I wept with joy. "His eyes," David said, his voice strange. "They're blue." "They might change," the nurse said. They didn't. Evan's eyes stayed pale blue. David has brown eyes. I have hazel. We both have dark hair. Evan's was blonde from the start, almost white. "Must be a throwback," David said. "My grandmother had blonde hair and blue eyes. I accepted this. I wanted to. I had a beautiful, healthy baby, and I was too exhausted and too in love to question anything. What I didn't know was that on the same floor, 3 doors down, another woman was giving birth to another baby boy. Claire Davenport, 26, unmarried. The father was my husband. And what I didn't know, what I would not learn for 16 years, was that David's parents knew. They had known from the beginning. I found out about Claire 3 years after Evan was born. A credit card statement, a hotel charge, dated 9 months before Evan's birth. The same weekend David said he was at a conference in Philadelphia. I confronted him in the kitchen. Evan was napping upstairs. "Who is she?" David didn't deny it. "Her name is Claire. It was a mistake. One time. I'm so sorry, Margaret." He begged me to forgive him. Swore on our son's life he'd never see her again. Said she moved away. Said he didn't even know if the baby was a boy or girl. Said he chose me. I should have left him. Every therapist has told me the same thing. But I didn't. I was 3 years into motherhood, sleep-deprived and isolated and so afraid of being alone that I convinced myself his betrayal was survivable. For Evan's sake, I told myself. I never met Claire. David said she had family in another state, that she left without telling him where. I believed him because I needed to. The alternative was too enormous to face. So I buried it. I focused on Evan, on creating a life so full of love that maybe the foundation would be strong enough to hold the cracks. And through all of it, David's parents were there, Helen and Robert Brennan. They called me the daughter we never had. They were at the hospital the day Evan was born. They held him before I did. Helen was small, silver-haired, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She remembered every birthday, sent handwritten thank you notes, organized the church bake sale. She was proper, kind, the mother I had always wanted. Robert was a retired accountant, tall and stooped, hands trembling from early Parkinson's. He didn't say much, but when he did, people listened. He carved the turkey at Thanksgiving, said grace before every meal. For 15 years I had loved them. For 15 years I had believed they loved me back. I was wrong. The night I got the second DNA test, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and remembered everything. The blue eyes, the blonde hair, the way David looked at his watch when Evan was born. Not with joy, but with relief. And I remembered Claire. I searched for her. 20 minutes on social media. Claire Davenport Miller. Married to Robert Miller. Living 40 minutes away. One child. A son. Dylan. I clicked his profile picture and the world stopped. Dylan had dark hair and hazel eyes. My eyes. The shape of his face was David's, but the coloring was mine. The same coloring I had wondered about in Evan for 15 years. I understood everything. I opened the car door and vomited on the asphalt, my body rejecting the truth. 2 women, 2 baby boys, same hospital, same night. David had known. The timing, the eyes, the hair. He had looked at our son and seen the truth. He had let me love a stranger for 15 years while my real son grew up in another woman's house, calling another man daddy. But then I thought of something worse. Helen and Robert had been at the hospital that night. They had arrived within an hour. They had held Evan, looked at his blue eyes and blonde hair and smiled. Said he looked just like David's grandmother. Said he was a true Brennan. Had they known too? I remembered Helen's face when she first held Evan. She had looked at him a long moment, then at David. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. I had thought it was grandmotherly pride. Now I wondered if it was recognition. I remembered Robert watching Evan with an expression I couldn't read. Now I wondered if it was guilt. I remembered the money. Every Christmas, expensive gifts for Evan, train sets, bicycles, laptops, savings bonds. I had thought they were generous. Now I wondered if it was compensation. I remembered the trips. Every summer, Helen and Robert visited old friends 2 hours away. They never invited us. Now I wondered if they were visiting Claire, visiting Dylan, spending summers with their real grandson while I was home with the boy they knew was not theirs. The hatred that rose in me was cold and quiet and absolute. I didn't confront David. I knew he would deny it, lie the way he had lied for 15 years. I needed proof. So I became someone else. Patient, methodical, cold. I went to work, smiled at colleagues, balanced spreadsheets, and inside, I was planning a war. I hired a private investigator, Frank, a retired cop. I told him I suspected ongoing infidelity and needed everything about Claire Davenport Miller. Everything? Frank asked. Everything. Her marriage, her son, her medical history, where she was March 14th, 16 years ago, and my in-laws, where they go, who they see, what they do. Frank didn't ask why. He took my retainer and started digging. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of playing normal wife, cooking dinners I didn't eat, making conversation I didn't hear, sleeping beside my enemy. 3 weeks of Sunday dinners at Helen and Robert's, sitting at their oak table, pretending I didn't know they were actors in a play written 16 years ago. Frank called on a Tuesday. "You need to see this." We met at a highway diner. Frank slid a manila envelope across the table. Hospital records. St. Mercy General, March 14th, 16 years ago. 2 birth certificates. Room 214, Margaret Brennan, 11:47 p.m. Room 217, Claire Davenport, 3:52 a.m. and more. Claire's medical records. The father's name on the initial intake, David Brennan. He had known. He had been there. He had held Claire's hand, counted her contractions, watched his second son enter the world while his first slept 3 doors away. There's something else. Frank pulled out a check copy, dated 2 weeks after the births, made out to Claire Davenport for $20,000, signed by David Brennan. "Hush money," Frank said. I stared at the check. $20,000. The price of my son. The price of 15 years of lies. And the hospital? The swap? Frank shook his head. Can't prove that. Records are incomplete. Could have been an accident. 2 babies, similar times. Tired staff. It happens. An accident he never corrected, I said. Then a second envelope. Thicker. Photographs. Dozens of them. Helen and Robert at a park, pushing a toddler on a swing. At a school play, front row, clapping. At a birthday party, wearing party hats, smiling around a cake. The child was Dylan. Taken over the last 10 years, Frank said. Your in-laws visit Claire and Dylan regularly, at least once a month. Standing reservation at a bed and breakfast near Claire's house, since Dylan was about 2. I flipped through the photos. Helen holding Dylan's hand as he learned to walk. Robert teaching him to ride a bicycle. Helen and Robert at Dylan's middle school graduation, standing beside Claire, posed like a family. They know, I whispered. They know, Frank confirmed. And there's more. A trust fund, established by Robert Brennan, Dylan Miller, sole beneficiary, $200,000, released at 21. They're paying for his college, Frank said. Meanwhile, Evan has savings bonds, a few thousand. Helen said it was all they could afford. They lied, I said. I sat in that diner and looked at the photographs of my in-laws with their real grandson, and something broke inside me. Helen had held my hand at my father's funeral, cried with me, told me she was proud to call me her daughter. And all the while she was visiting another woman's child, building a secret life with the boy who should have been mine, while I was home, loving the boy who was hers. I paid Frank and drove home, sat in my garage with the engine off and thought about what to do. I could go to the police, file a lawsuit against the hospital, confront David, demand divorce, take him for everything. But none of that felt like enough. None of that felt like justice. Because justice wasn't just about punishing David. It was about all of them. The 4 people who had looked me in the eye for 15 years and lied, who had built their happiness on my ignorance, let me love a stranger while they secretly loved the child I had lost. I wanted them all to feel it. I wanted them to stand before the 2 boys they had betrayed and explain themselves. I wanted them in the same room, looking at each other, knowing the game was over. I started with the cakes. A bakery that made custom photo cakes. I ordered 3. 1 with Dylan's school portrait, my eyes smiling. 1 with Evan at the beach last summer, blonde hair windblown, blue eyes squinting. And 1 with Helen and Robert at last Thanksgiving, arms around each other, smiling like the perfect grandparents they pretended to be. I said it was for a family reunion. The baker didn't question it. Then the invitations. I didn't send one to David, he'd be there. It was his son's birthday. I sent one to Claire, found her address through Frank's files, handwritten, left hand so she wouldn't recognize the script. Mrs. Miller, you are cordially invited to celebrate the 16th birthday of your son. March 14th, 7 p.m., the Brennan residence. Please come alone. Your husband is not invited. M. Then to Helen and Robert, their formal names, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Brennan, you are cordially invited to a special family gathering on March 14th at 7 p.m. Your presence is required. Please do not be late. Margaret. Helen called the next day. Margaret, dear, what's this about? Everything is fine, Helen. I just thought it was time for us all to be together, to celebrate Evan's birthday properly, as a family. Oh, she said, hesitation flickering. Well, that's lovely, dear. I know you wouldn't miss it, I said. You've always been such wonderful grandparents. I'm so grateful for everything you've done for Evan, for our family. A long pause. Then, her voice slightly strained. Of course, dear. We'll see you on the 14th. I hung up and smiled. A real smile, for the first time in weeks. Because I knew she knew. I knew she was afraid. March 14th arrived cold and clear. The house was spotless. I had cleaned every room, as if I could scrub away 15 years of lies. blue and silver balloons, the theme Evan chose at 6 and never changed. David was cheerful. He made chocolate chip pancakes, sang happy birthday off-key while Evan rolled his eyes. A performance so familiar it made me sick. "You're quiet," David said, clearing dishes. "Everything okay?" "Fine. Just thinking about the party tonight. I invited someone special." "Oh yeah? Who?" "You'll see." Evan went to his room after breakfast, feeling weak, wanting to rest. His color had been bad, a grayish undertone from the kidney failure. On dialysis 3 times a week, exhausted. I loved him so much it hurt. I loved him even knowing he wasn't mine biologically. Love doesn't care about DNA. I had held this boy when he was hours old, watched his first steps, first words, first lost tooth. I had chosen him every day for 15 years, not knowing the choice had been made for me. At 6, I set up. 3 cakes on the kitchen island, photographs facing the room. Candles, 16 for each boy's cake, 68 for Helen and Robert's, 1 for every year of their combined lives, every lie they told. Presents for Evan and Dylan, wrapped identically because they were both my sons. David came downstairs at 6:30. "Looks great, honey. Evan's going to love it." "Yes," I said. "He is." The doorbell rang at 6:50. David answered. I stood in the kitchen and listened, his voice confused, then alarmed. "Claire, what are you—" I walked into the hallway. Claire Davenport Miller stood on my doorstep, coat too thin for the weather, face pale and drawn. The guilt in her eyes, the fear, the knowledge she had been dreading this moment for 16 years. "Come in, Claire," I said. "We're just getting started." David stared at me, confusion and dawning horror. "Margaret, what is this? Why is she—" "Because it's time," I said. "It's time for the truth. All of it." I led them into the kitchen. Claire followed like a woman walking to her execution. David followed because he had no choice. The doorbell rang again at 7:15. I answered it. Helen and Robert stood on my porch. Sunday best. Helen in lavender, Robert in tweed, holding a gift-wrapped box. "Margaret," Helen said, smile bright but eyes cautious. "What a lovely surprise." "Come in, Helen. Robert, I'm so glad you could make it. There's someone I want you to meet." I stepped aside. They walked into the kitchen and I watched their faces as they saw Claire. Helen's smile froze. Robert's hand tightened on the gift box. They looked at Claire, then David, then me, and I saw the moment they understood. The blood drained from Helen's face. Robert's shoulders sagged. "Sit down," I said. "All of you. We have a lot to talk about." I stood between the 3 cakes, candle flames dancing, and looked at the 5 people in my kitchen. My husband, who had betrayed me in the most profound way. The woman he betrayed me with, who had gone along with the lie for 16 years. My in-laws, who had called me daughter while secretly loving another woman's child. 16 years ago, I said, 2 women gave birth in the same hospital on the same night. Claire Davenport and me. We both had baby boys. Both had blue eyes. Born within hours of each other. I paused, letting the words sink in. David had gone very still. Claire trembled. Helen's knuckles were white, gripping Robert's hand. "The hospital made a mistake," I continued. "Our babies were swapped. I went home with Claire's son. Claire went home with mine." Evan made a wounded noise. "Mom." "Let me finish," I said, gentle but firm. "Evan, I need you to listen. I need all of you to listen." I turned to David. "You knew. From the beginning you knew. You looked at Evan's blue eyes and you knew he wasn't ours. You looked at me holding him and said nothing. You let me love him. You let me raise him. And all the while, you knew my son, our son, was growing up in another house, with another family, while I was here loving a stranger." David opened his mouth, but I held up my hand. Don't lie. I have the DNA tests, the hospital records, The checks you wrote to Claire. I have everything, David. There is nowhere left for you to hide. He closed his mouth. His face went gray. I turned to Claire. And you. You knew too. You looked at Dylan and saw my eyes. David's face. You knew he wasn't yours. And you kept him anyway. You took the money and kept quiet and raised my son as your own. Claire was crying, silent tears streaming. I didn't know at first. Not until he was 3, when his eyes started to change. I confronted David then. He said it was better this way, that switching them back would only cause trauma. He said what you wanted to hear. I finished. Because you wanted to keep my son. Because you wanted the life you couldn't have on your own. Claire didn't deny it. She just stood there, weeping, and I felt no pity. Then I turned to Helen and Robert, sitting at the table, holding hands, faces pale. And you, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper somehow louder than a shout. You knew too. Helen flinched. Robert looked down. I have photographs, I said. Years of photographs. You visiting Dylan, pushing him on swings, teaching him to ride a bike, sitting front row at his school plays. You have a trust fund for him, $200,000. You visit him every month. I walked to the counter, pulled out Frank's file, spread the photographs across the table. Look at them. Look at what you did. Look at the life you built with the boy who should have been mine, while I was here loving the boy who was yours. Helen was crying. Great, silent sobs. Robert wouldn't look at me. You called me daughter, I said, and my voice broke, just for a moment. You held my hand at my father's funeral. You told me you were proud of me. You told me I was family. And all the while, you knew. You knew Evan wasn't your grandson. You knew Dylan was. You knew I was raising a stranger, and you let me do it. You let me love him. You let me grieve for a child I didn't even know I had lost. I walked to the third cake, the one with Helen and Robert's photograph, carried it to the table, placed it in front of them, candles burning. This is for you. 68 candles. One for every year of your lives. One for every lie you told me. Blow them out. Both of you. You watched this happen. You blessed the theft with your silence and your money and your secret visits. You chose your son over me. You chose your real grandson over the boy I was raising. Now explain it to him. I pointed to Evan, sitting at the table, face white, hands gripping the chair so hard his knuckles were white. Explain to him, I said, steady and cold, why his grandparents, the people supposed to love him unconditionally, knew he wasn't their grandson and never told him. Explain why they spent 16 years pretending, while secretly loving another boy. Explain why he wasn't enough. Helen reached out a trembling hand toward Evan, but he flinched back. Evan, she whispered. Sweetheart, we loved you. We always loved you. It wasn't... Then what was it like? Evan asked, voice cracking. Grandma, did you know? Did you know I wasn't your real grandson? Helen's mouth opened and closed. No sound. Answer him, I said. You owe him that much. Robert finally looked up, red-rimmed eyes, older than I'd ever seen him. We didn't know at first, he said, rough and quiet. Not when he was born. We thought he was ours. Helen's mother had blue eyes. We thought it was possible. But then you found out, I said. Robert nodded. David told us. When Evan was about 6 months old, he was worried about the eyes, the hair. He had a DNA test done. Secretly. It showed Evan wasn't his. And Dylan? We found out about Dylan later. David told us about Claire, the baby. We didn't know about the swap. We thought Claire's baby was just another grandchild. We went to see him. And when we saw him, his eyes, his face, we knew. We knew he was yours. We knew what had happened. And you said nothing. We were afraid, Helen whispered, broken. We were so afraid. If we told the truth, we'd lose everything. David would lose his marriage. we'd lose you. We'd lose Evan. We thought if we kept quiet, if we loved both boys, if we were careful, we thought we could protect everyone. You protected yourselves, I said. You protected your son, your secret. You didn't protect me. You didn't protect Evan. You didn't protect Dylan. You made a choice, Helen. You and Robert both. You chose to lie. You chose to deceive. You chose to let me live in ignorance while you built a secret life with the child I had lost. I turned back to Evan. He was crying, great heaving sobs, and I went to him, knelt in front of his chair, took his hands in mine. You are my son, I said, looking into his blue eyes. You have been my son from the moment they placed you in my arms. Biology doesn't make a mother, Evan. Love makes a mother. And I have loved you every day of your life. I will love you every day that remains. Nothing, not DNA, not hospital mistakes, not anything, can change that. He collapsed into my arms and I held him the way I had when he was a baby, sick and scared and needing his mother. I held him and wept with him, but there was more truth to tell. I stood up and turned back to David, Claire, Helen, and Robert. I gestured to the 3 cakes, candles still burning. These are for all of you. 3 cakes. 3 lives you stole. David, you stole my son. Claire, you kept him. Helen, Robert, you blessed the theft with your silence and your love. I pointed to Dylan's cake. This is my son, the boy I never held. He has my eyes, my coloring. He's 16, and he doesn't know I exist. He thinks Claire is his mother. He has no idea his real father is standing in this kitchen, or that his real mother has been grieving him for 16 years without knowing why. And he has no idea his grandparents have been visiting him in secret, treating him like a dirty secret, while pretending to love another boy. I pointed to Evan's cake. And this is your son, Claire, the boy I raised, the boy I loved, the boy who is sick and needs a kidney transplant, and whose biological mother, you, might be the only one who can save him. You took him from me, but you also gave him to me, and I will be grateful for that until the day I die. But you need to know what you did. You need to look at his face and understand that he is dying, and that you have the power to help him, and that you have hidden that power for 16 years because you were too selfish to tell the truth. I pointed to Helen and Robert's cake. And this is for you, for the grandparents who knew, for the people who called me daughter while secretly loving another woman's child. You were supposed to protect us. You were supposed to be better than this. I picked up the 3 cakes and carried them to the table, placed them in front of the 4 people who had destroyed my life. Blow them out, I said. All of you. You planned this together. You kept this secret together. You built your lives on the ruins of 2 innocent children. Now explain it to our sons. No one moved. The candles burned, 48 tiny flames. Blow them out, I said again, and this time my voice was steel. Claire reached out first. Her hand shook so badly she needed both to cup the flame. She blew, and the candles on Dylan's cake went out, his face disappearing into shadow. David didn't blow out Evan's candles. He just stood there, staring at the photograph. Then he fell to his knees. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice cracking. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting everyone. I thought if I told the truth, it would destroy everything. You thought about yourself, I said. That's all you ever thought about. Your reputation, your marriage, your comfortable life. You never thought about Evan. You never thought about Dylan. You never thought about me or Claire or what it meant to live alive for 16 years. You were a coward, David. You are a coward. And I am done being married to a coward. Helen reached toward the cake with her and Robert's photograph. Her hand trembled as she cupped the flames, and she blew until all 68 candles were out. The kitchen smelled of smoke and wax, and the end of something that should never have begun. Robert didn't blow. He just sat there, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. I turned to Evan. Evan, I said softly, I need to tell you one more thing, and then we're going to figure out what comes next. Together. He looked at me, eyes red-rimmed and wet, and nodded. Dylan is your half-brother, I said. You share the same father, and he might be able to help you. He might be a match for the kidney transplant. His mother, Claire, might be a match too. We don't know yet. But what I do know is that you deserve to live, Evan. You deserve every chance, every treatment, every possibility. And I am going to make sure you get them. Even if it means tearing down everything your father built. I looked at Claire. Claire, you have a choice. You can walk out and go back to your life and pretend this never happened, or you can stay. You can help. You can tell Dylan the truth. Get tested. Try to save the boy you raised, the boy who is your son in every way that matters, even if he isn't by blood. And you can meet your real son. You can know him. You can be part of his life if he wants you to be. She looked at Evan, really looked at him, for the first time. I saw the recognition, the same blue eyes, the same blonde hair, the same features she had seen in the mirror for 16 years. I'll stay, she whispered. I'll do whatever you need. I'll tell Dylan. I'll get tested. I'll do anything. I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It would never be forgiveness, but it was a start. The first honest thing said in this kitchen in 16 years. I turned to Helen and Robert. You have a choice too. You can walk away. Go back to your house and your church and your bake sales and pretend tonight never happened. Or you can stay. You can help. You can get tested. You can try to save the boy you raised. The boy who called you grandma and grandpa. Who loved you. Who trusted you. And you can meet your real grandson. You can know him. You can be part of his life, if he wants you to be. But you will never again be part of mine. Not as family. Not as anything. Helen looked at me, eyes streaming. Margaret, please. We loved you. We still love you. We were wrong. We know we were wrong. But please, don't take our family from us. You took my family from me, I said. 16 years ago. You just didn't tell me you were doing it. Robert finally looked up, gray and hollow. We'll stay. We'll get tested. We'll do whatever we can. For Evan. For Dylan. For you, Margaret. Even if you don't want us to. I didn't respond. I turned back to David, still on his knees, still weeping. Get up. You're not finished. You have 2 sons who need to hear from you. You have 16 years of lies to undo, and you have a divorce to sign. But first, you're going to blow out those candles. Because this is Evan's birthday, and he deserves a father who at least pretends to care. David stood up, wiped his face with his sleeve, looked at Evan, and for the first time in years, I saw something real in his eyes. Just grief. The crushing weight of what he had done, finally breaking through. He leaned over the cake and blew. The candles went out, one by one, 16 tiny deaths. Happy birthday, son, David said, barely audible. Evan didn't respond. He just looked at me, and I saw the question. What happens now? I didn't have a complete answer. I knew there would be lawyers and doctors and therapists, and probably a public court case against the hospital. I knew there would be pain. For Evan, for Dylan, for all of us. I knew the life we had known was over, but I also knew this. I had told the truth. I had faced the people who had hurt me, all of them, and made them face what they had done. I had stood in my kitchen with 3 cakes and 48 candles and demanded accountability. And I had done it not with violence or revenge, but with the simple, devastating power of the truth. I put my arm around Evan's shoulders and pulled him close, felt him lean into me, his head on my shoulder, his body still shaking. We'll figure it out, I whispered. I promise. We'll figure it out together. And as I stood there, holding my son, in every way that mattered, I looked at the 3 cakes on the table. 3 photographs. 2 boys and a couple tangled together by a hospital's mistake and a family's cowardice that would now, finally, begin to untangle. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be quick, but it would be honest. And after 16 years of lies, honesty was the only gift I had left to give. The candles were out. Smoke rose in thin gray trails, and the kitchen smelled of wax and sugar and the end of something that should never have begun. Outside, the March wind blew cold against the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. But inside, in the quiet aftermath of the truth, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Not the naive hope of a young wife who believes her husband would never hurt her, but the hard-earned hope of a woman who has survived the worst that life can offer and has chosen, deliberately and defiantly, to keep going. I looked at Evan, at his pale face and tired eyes, and I knew that whatever came next, the tests, the treatments, the painful conversations with a boy named Dylan who had my eyes, we would face it together. Because love, real love, is not about DNA or blood or biology. It is about showing up. It is about staying. It is about choosing every single day to be someone's mother, someone's family, someone's home. And I had chosen Evan 16 years ago, in a hospital room, when they placed a blue-eyed baby in my arms, and I looked at him and I knew, with a certainty that transcended science, that he was mine. He was still mine. He would always be mine. And now, finally, the world would know it too. The hospital settled out of court for an amount that will cover Evan's medical expenses for life. Claire was a perfect match for the kidney transplant, as if the universe was trying to correct its own mistake. The surgery was successful. Evan is recovering well. Dylan came to visit last week. He has my eyes, just like I knew he would, and a shy smile that breaks my heart. We're taking it slow. He calls me Margaret for now. Names can change. Love takes time. David signed the divorce papers. I haven't seen him since the birthday party. Some people aren't worth the space they take up in your head. Helen and Robert sent a letter. They apologized. They said they were getting tested, that they wanted to help Evan. They said they understood if I never forgave them. I haven't written back. Some betrayals are too deep for words. Claire and I are not friends. We may never be friends. But we are something else. 2 mothers who lost and found each other through the same tragedy, bound by a secret that is no longer secret, and by 2 sons who need us both. I keep the 3 photographs from the cakes in a frame on my desk. Evan and Dylan, side by side, the same age, the same father, 2 halves of a story still being written. And beneath them, the photograph of Helen and Robert, a reminder of what happens when the people who are supposed to love you choose silence instead of truth. And every night before I sleep, I look at those photographs and I whisper the same thing I whispered to Evan in the hospital 16 years ago, when I held him for the first time and I knew, with a mother's certainty, that he was mine. I love you. I choose you. Always. Some truths are stronger than biology. Some families are built not by blood, but by the courage to tell the truth, and the love that survives it.